Sigh. I'm exhausted, completely drained. Despite his monthly salary barely reaching 2 million won, Sejun manages to save 1 million won each month by cutting down on living expenses after paying his rent and student loan installments. This has allowed him to accumulate a sum of 12 million won in his savings account. However, even though this is a considerable amount, it falls short of Sejun's goal. Phew. When will I ever be able to buy a ticket? Can I even afford one? Sejun sighed, overwhelmed by his challenging objective. A mysterious 99-story black tower appeared out of nowhere in the heart of Gangnam, Seoul. 10 years ago, the tower boasted geometric patterns and a structure defying the laws of physics. Towers of a similar nature appeared simultaneously in 100 cities across the globe. Although each country conducted an investigation into the tower that emerged within their borders, they reaped little benefit from their findings. The information they uncovered revealed that the tower stood 990 meters tall, constructed from a material so strong that even a nuclear bomb couldn't damage it, and had no visible entrance. In an unexpected turn of events, people started emerging from the tower one by one. They seemed to pass through the walls of the tower naturally. Investigators swiftly identified these individuals, learning that they were people who had recently vanished. How did you enter the tower? Responding to the investigators' questions, they explained that they hadn't entered the tower but had been sucked into a black hole. When they regained consciousness, they found themselves on the first floor of the tower. Thus, information about the tower began to unfold through the accounts of those who emerged from it. Level 1. The 100 towers are interconnected as a single entity. Level 1. Upon entering the tower, you awaken and assume the role of either a magician or a warrior. Level 1. Monsters inhabit the tower from the second floor upward, growing stronger as the floors ascend. Level 1 rewards are given for clearing each floor, with the value of rewards increasing with each level. However, there are no rewards for clearing the same floor twice. No one understood the purpose of these towers. But one thing was certain. Climbing the tower generated wealth. Items obtained within the tower fetched high prices on Earth. Among the items was something called a ticket. Tickets were one of the primary sources of income for the awakened, with a high probability of obtaining one or more tickets upon clearing a floor. Those who had already awakened didn't require a ticket to enter the tower. However, ordinary people with tickets could access the tower. Once inside the tower, they would awaken and gain the qualification to ascend. Consequently, tickets were neither cheap nor easy to acquire. In Korea, for example, the Korean Awakened Association purchased tickets from hunters in bulk and resold them. The price was set at 150 million won per ticket. Due to high demand, news surfaced that the price would soar to 200 million won within a week. Hundreds of people had already paid in advance, eagerly awaiting their chance to purchase a ticket. I can't give up. Upon seeing frequent news about people getting rich through tower tickets, Sejun made a bold decision. Grow crops at home. It was a way to tighten his belt even further. He didn't intend to cultivate anything extraordinary. He planned to grow a few low-maintenance plants to save on living expenses. I'll start today. With that, he bought some green onions and a few other items at the supermarket before heading home. Sejun hummed a tune, filled with determination. If I start growing fruits and vegetables at home, I can save a lot on food expenses and enjoy an abundance of produce. This is how I'll save money to buy a ticket and enter the tower. Then, I'll earn loads of money in the tower for Serang and me. Sejun daydreamed about Serang, a member of Korea's top girl group Moonlight Fairy. In other words, it was Sejun's own fantasy. While Sejun was lost in his daydream and walking with a goofy grin, a black hole appeared in the empty space in front of him. And then, whoosh, it began to suck in everything around it. What? What is this? Sejun was greatly startled upon discovering the black hole, which didn't reveal its other side. It's a vanishing. Vanishing was a phenomenon where people were sucked into to the tower. All the first awakened ones went through a vanishing. Anyway, it's very fortunate, harder to come by than winning the lottery. Sejun hurriedly sent messages to his family, worried that they might look for him if he disappeared without a word. When he finished sending the messages, "Why am I still here? Even if I got sucked into a hole, I should have been sucked in a long time ago." Sejun kept staring at the black hole, waiting for it to take him. But there was no sign that the suction force was getting stronger. "Hurry up and take me already." "Huh? Why is it shrinking?" The hole was even closing. "No. My future." Serang. Sejun made up his mind. The future was for pioneers. "That's right. I'm going in." Sejun charged into the hole. With that, he disappeared into the pitch-black darkness. "Where am I?" As soon as Sejun exited the hole, he realized something was off. The information he heard about the first floor of the tower was very different from what he saw. On the first floor of the tower, there were supposed to be luxurious chandeliers lighting up the area, white marble floors, a spacious plaza with shops selling equipment and potions, and training centers where warriors and magicians could learn skills. But this place was a cave made of rocks, not even a single shop or training center in sight. The only similarity with the first floor of the tower was that it was spacious. The only saving grace was that there was no luxurious chandelier lighting, but a single beam of sunlight illuminated the cave through a hole in the ceiling. "Let's find the exit first." Sejun looked around for a way out. The first place he marked as a potential exit was the hole in the cave ceiling. However, climbing the wall to reach the arched hole in the ceiling seemed impossible unless he was Spider-Man. "Let's look for another place." Sejun placed his bag on a rock and began to explore the cave. A moment later, "Why is this place so vast?" The cave was much more extensive than he had thought. The far end of the cave was so dark that he could hardly see anything since the sunlight couldn't reach it. "I have to conserve power." But Sejun reluctantly turned on his smartphone's flashlight on a low setting and continued exploring the cave. 3 hours later, the cave exploration was over. The cave was completely blocked off in all directions. He checked every gap between the rocks and weak points, but there was no place that seemed like a possible exit. "There's no exit. Did I end up stranded?" Sejun mumbled as if he had lost his mind, and trudged back to the place where the sun was shining through the hole in the cave ceiling. What should I do? He had to admit it. It was impossible for him to get out of here alone. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Sejun shouted desperately towards the hole in the cave ceiling. But, "Hey tilde, I'm here tilde." Sejun's desperate shout couldn't escape the hole and only circled inside the cave. "Hello? Is there someone here?" Sejun screamed until his throat was about to burst. But not a single person, let alone anything, passed by near the hole. "Damn it. Can anyone hear me?" Thump. Sejun couldn't hold back his anger and kicked the ground for no reason. And so, a day had passed. Day 2 of being lost. May 11th, 6 a.m. Beep beep beep. The alarm he had set for work rang. Ugh. Sejun got up with difficulty from the uncomfortable sleeping place and turned off the alarm on his smartphone. Sejun, who had just woken up, stared at the hole in the cave ceiling all day. Even after several hours had passed, no one passed by. "Is there anyone?" Sejun's shout was only reflected off the damp rocks and returned as a gloomy echo. Grr. Sejun's stomach grumbled. Although he was worried, he had to eat to survive. "Ugh. I'm really hungry." He realized that he hadn't eaten anything since he left work. "What should I eat?" Sejun found a flat rock to sit on and settled down. And then, rustle. He took out an apple wrapped in a plastic bag from his bag. It was a washed apple given to him by a co-worker at the office. "Thank you, Manjun." Sejun decided that if he ever got out of here, he would repay Manjun with sweet and sour pork. It's not that Manjun liked sweet and sour pork, but Sejun was craving it with black bean noodles right now. So, Sejun resolved to treat Manjun to sweet and sour pork and ripped open the plastic packaging to take a big bite of the apple. Crunch! The sweet and sour juice of the apple filled his mouth. It's so delicious. As his appetite returned, his hunger became uncontrollable. Crunch! Crunch! Sejun was devouring the apple as if he was possessed. Ah! He stared at the remaining apple core and seeds with a forlorn expression. The amount was insufficient. Thump! Thump! Sejun dug a shallow hole with his foot and buried the apple seeds and core together. Then, he started to take out the items from his bag. A laptop, 500 milliliters of water left from the office, green onions, cherry tomatoes, and sweet potatoes he had bought to grow at home. 1, 2, 3. Sejun began to count the cherry tomatoes in the plastic container. He wanted to accurately understand the amount of food he had. 27 cherry tomatoes, 10 green onion stalks, and 7 sweet potatoes. For now, he planted all the green onions, 3 cherry tomatoes, and 2 sweet potatoes, and left the rest as food. Cherry tomatoes have many seeds inside, so even just 3 of them can yield a lot of plants. As for sweet potatoes, they were the only available food that could provide carbohydrates. But he couldn't plant many of them. First, let's fill up my stomach. Sejun washed a sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes in the small pond. It was fortunate that there was a small pond in the corner of the cave. At least he could find water. It would have been nice if there were fish too. There were no creatures the size of tadpoles in the pond. Sejun realized there were no insects or small animals like mice in the cave either. Sejun would normally be scared by insects or mice, but now that there were none, it felt strange. He had seen many scenes in movies where people ate insects or mice when there was no food. Really, if the food runs out, I might have to eat something like that. Of course, it would be best to escape this place before the food runs out. As he chewed the sweet potato, the crisp sound made his scattered thoughts disappear. Now was the time to focus on the sweet potato. Yum yum. It was delicious. The more he chewed, the sweeter it became. He always boiled or roasted sweet potatoes, but he thought it was fine to eat them raw sometimes. Now, let's get to work. After finishing 1 sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes, Sejun picked up a green onion. And then, he broke off about 1/3 of the green leafy part from the root of the onion, placed it separately on the ground. I'll eat it later. Although it wouldn't taste good, he might have to eat it to survive. Sejun buried the white part of the onion root in the soft soil where the sunlight entered. Then he planted 2 sweet potatoes on the left side and cherry tomatoes on the right side. He simply buried the sweet potatoes in the ground and planted the seeds that came out of hay. Crushed cherry tomatoes. He sucked the tomato juice off his hands and went to the pond. He filled a 500 milliliters water bottle with pond water and watered the crops he had just planted. When the work was finished, Sejun lay down on a rock, looking at the ceiling, and waited for someone to pass by. He tried to minimize energy consumption due to the lack of food and occasionally shouted, "Is anyone here?" But no one passed by. Beep beep. Beep beep. May 12th, 6 a.m. Day 3 of being lost. Chapter 2. Which floor is this? Thud. Sleeping on the floor made my body so stiff. The good thing about this place is that there is no night. So, if you sleep where the sun is just right, you can sleep comfortably at a pleasant temperature. Splash. Splash. Sejun washed his face briefly at the pond. And then, splash, swish, swash. He washed the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes he would eat today. It feels strange to wash them with the water I used to wash my face. Sejun put aside his discomfort and bit into a sweet potato. Crunch. The more I chew, the sweeter it becomes. Did I ever have the luxury of chewing on something sweet like this without having to go to work? He sat down on a dry patch of dirt where the sun was shining, laid out his bag, and chewed on a sweet potato slowly. There was complete silence, except for the sound of chewing. His heartbeat started to slow down, and his mind also calmed down. He was lost, and his food would run out in a few days. He might starve to death. Strange. Sejun tilted his head. He was amazed by his own feelings. But it was better than being anxious. Every time Manager Go called out, "Sejun, can you come over here for a minute?" my heart would race. But, how peaceful it is now. Sejun leisurely enjoyed the sweet potato, relishing the peace that he couldn't feel easily before. Shall we move on to the next menu? After finishing the sweet potato, Sejun put a cherry tomato in his mouth and chewed. Pop! The skin of the cherry tomato couldn't withstand the pressure of Sejun's teeth and burst. Sourness filled his mouth as the juice of the cherry tomato exploded. It's delicious. It was so delicious that he doubted whether it was the same cherry tomato he usually ate. Perhaps his taste buds had become extremely sensitive due to hunger. Sejun focused solely on the taste of the cherry tomato and chewed slowly. However, chewing on the cherry tomato for a long time didn't make it taste better, so the 5 cherry tomatoes quickly disappeared into Sejun's mouth. After finishing his meal, Sejun began his daily routine, staring at the hole in the ceiling. Sejun stared blankly at the hole in the ceiling. I'm bored. Of course, he occasionally shouted, "Is anyone here?" But even that was done while looking at the ceiling. After staring at the ceiling for several hours, it was so tiring that he felt like he was going crazy. Is there anything to do? Sejun started looking for something to do. Let's water the crops first. Sejun filled a water bottle and watered the onions, cherry tomatoes, and sweet potatoes. Jol jol jol. Grow fast. Grow huge. Daddy is hungry. He went back and forth to the pond 3 times, thoroughly soaking the ground where the crops were planted. Then, Garoff, his stomach informed him of the fuel shortage. Just moving a little made him hungry again. Sejun poured the remaining water from the water bottle into his mouth. Gulp. Gulp. He felt his stomach fill up a bit. Sejun returned to his spot and stared at the hole in the ceiling. After several hours, Sejun stared blankly at the ceiling when, beep beep, beep beep, the alarm went off. May 12th 10 p.m. There is no sunset here. So, he set the alarm to match his bedtime. It's time to sleep. Sejun got up and prepared for bed. There wasn't much to do in terms of preparation. Tap tap. He leveled the dirt floor where he would lie down and covered his head with his bag so he couldn't see the sun. That was the end of his bedtime preparations. Surprisingly, sleep came easily. In the middle of the night, by Sejun's standards, grr, 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 Sejun woke up from sleep due to the ground shaking vibrations. What's going on? Just then, grr, he felt another strong vibration. It was close. Sejun hurriedly removed the bag from his face and got up. And then he witnessed the bizarre scene. What is this? The light coming down from the cave ceiling had turned blue. And, screech, caw, he heard strange, threatening noises. At that moment, roar, a huge black dragon appeared in the sky and roared. The sight of it flying high alone, cutting through the blue light, was astonishingly beautiful. The black dragon roared and disappeared gracefully. The other monsters became silent, perhaps frightened by the dragon's roar. However, Sejun's mind was noisier than ever. Monsters, this can't be happening. Sejun thought something was wrong. He believed that this place was somewhere on the first floor of the tower. He wanted to believe that the light illuminating the cave all day was the chandelier lighting of the first floor of the tower. But there were no monsters on the first floor. In other words, Sejun was not on the first floor of the tower. Moreover, the blue moon, where the sun turns blue. Every floor has sunlight all day long. But on each floor, there is a periodic time when the sun turns blue. Hunters called this phenomenon the blue moon. During the blue moon, monsters become more aggressive and powerful. So hunters avoid the floors where the blue moon occurs. The blue moon is a phenomenon that occurs only on the 10th floor and above. This meant that Sejun was on the 10th floor or above. There was still a chance he could be rescued. However, there's a catch. That was the dragon. After the tower appeared 10 years ago, the Phoenix Guild, the most powerful force on Earth, recently achieved the feat of clearing the 37th floor. From the 31st to the 37th floor, guilds were keeping each other in check, so they didn't release any information. But below the 30th floor, quite a few clear videos were uploaded to YouTube for money or publicity. According to the known information, skeletons appear on floors 2 to 10, goblins on 11 to 20, orcs on 20 to 30. And from the 31st floor onwards, spider monsters appear. Although no videos were released, this was credible information, as multiple hunters had mentioned it in interviews. None of them mentioned dragons. They hadn't even heard of lizard-like monsters appearing in the tower. Which floor is this? Sejun clutched his head and wailed. He might have been stranded on a floor that even the top hunters had not reached. Why is this happening to me? Sejun looked at the hole in the ceiling with a heavy heart, bathed in blue light. However, his purpose had changed. Previously, he had looked up hoping someone would pass by, but now he hoped that no one would. After seeing the dragon, Sejun realized that there were monsters in this place. Beep beep, beep beep. May 13th, 6 a.m. The alarm went off. Sejun greeted the fourth day with sleepless eyes after standing guard all night. Fortunately, the blue moon turned back to its usual yellowish light around 4 a.m. 5 hours later, Sejun's head drooped as he stood guard. Then he fell into a deep sleep. It was understandable, as he had been keeping watch, staring at the ceiling since yesterday. Ugh, water. As soon as he woke up, Sejun felt a burning thirst. He fumbled for the water bottle he had placed beside him. And then, gulp, gulp, he drank the water in one shot. Phew. Now I feel alive. His thirst quenched, hunger set in. He went to the pond and quickly washed his face, as well as 5 sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes. Sejun chewed on a sweet potato while looking at the hole in the ceiling. Even if I don't know where I am, if it's above the 41st floor, the chances of someone coming are almost 0%. That meant he had to survive on his own. Sejun looked at the field where he had planted crops. Should I water them? Thinking that he had to survive on his own made the crops seem more precious. He watered them. You guys have to be strong. Sweet potatoes grow huge. Tomatoes bear lots of fruit. Green onion, just grow big and strong. He watered the plants and spoke kindly to them. He had heard on the news that playing music for plants could help them grow, so he thought a few kind words wouldn't hurt. After watering the plants, Sejun sat down and stared at the hole in the ceiling again. However, boredom quickly set in. Should I eat this? Sejun saw the green onion leaves he had pulled off when planting the roots on the first day. Ugh! It's spicy. As soon as he put the green onion leaves in his mouth and chewed, a spicy taste filled his mouth, accompanied by the strong scent of green onions. The taste had become more concentrated after drying in the sun for a couple of days. Sejun continued to chew without swallowing. There's sweetness in green onion too. As he kept chewing, the spiciness faded, and the hidden sweetness of the green onions gradually emerged. Great. He chewed on the green onion and managed to endure the drowsy afternoon hours. And then, beep beep, beep beep, May 13th 10 p.m. The fourth night of the ordeal had come. Will I be okay tonight? Sejun couldn't fall asleep easily. The monsters had been active at dawn because of the blue moon. However, that didn't mean they were friendly when it wasn't a blue moon. Sejun decided to prepare a sleeping place where there was no light. It would be cold, but nothing was more important than his life. Since he didn't have to sleep under the sun, He folded his bag and used it as a pillow. And then, srrrrrr. As soon as Sejun laid his head on the bag, he fell asleep snoring. While Sejun was asleep, the scallions with their roots in the ground began to grow in earnest. Beep beep, beep beep, the alarm went off. May 14th, 6 a.m. The fifth day of survival began. Sejun's eyes opened wide. Ugh! Why do I feel so light? Sejun stretched out refreshingly. He always felt heavy when waking up, but today his body felt extremely light. In addition, he thought it would be cold sleeping without the sun, but it wasn't cold. Is it because the fatigue from working at the company has been relieved? Sejun thought it was strange and went to the pond. Splash! Splash! He washed his face and picked out the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes to eat today. Ooh! When he picked up the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes for today, half of the food in the plastic container had disappeared. There wasn't much food left. Should I start eating only half from today? Sejun washed the picked sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes while pondering. Pop, pop, and snap. He cut the sweet potato in half and put half of it and 3 cherry tomatoes back into the plastic container. He was already running out of food, and the thought of having to cut back even more was disheartening. Sigh. Sejun sighed and moved to his usual spot with flat rocks well lit by the sun and sat down. However, something felt off. He was in the shade. Huh? What's this? The scallion, which had grown to Sejun's height, was blocking the sun that should have always been shining. There was no significant difference when he looked at it while watering it yesterday, and there was no change before going to bed. The scallions had grown tremendously overnight. When did it grow like this? As Sejun approached and examined it closely, the white part where the scallion roots were had grown to the thickness of a wrist. Sejun grabbed and tore off one of the new scallion leaves. Oh, what? The scallion leaves appeared fragile as they fluttered in the wind, yet they were surprisingly tough. Ugh! Sejun put in effort and tore off the leaf. What? Why is it like this all of a sudden? It seemed that the appearance of plants changed depending on the climate and habitat. How will it taste? He hoped that the taste would change as much as the appearance had. Sejun put the scallion leaf in his mouth and chewed. Chapter 3. Sprouting. Crunch. The scallion leaf was cut off with a pleasant sound, easier than expected. The texture was good as well. As soon as he chewed the scallion, a spicy taste spread throughout his mouth. His body warmed up from the spiciness. His pores opened and sweat poured out like rain. Swallowing his saliva, Sejun wiped the flowing sweat and continued to chew the scallion. However, the expected sweetness didn't come. I thought the sweetness would be stronger because the spiciness became stronger. It seemed that the taste had become entirely spicy. Gulp. When he swallowed the scallion, the spiciness disappeared cleanly. Fortunately, it didn't upset his stomach. I can eat the scallions when I crave something spicy. Crunch. Sejun continued to eat the scallions, which only had a spicy taste. For now, he had to satisfy his hunger. So, Sejun seemed to have eaten about a foot of scallions while dripping with sweat. Somehow, the more he sweated, the lighter his body felt. Crunch. Crunch. Sejun, who filled his stomach with scallions, mercilessly broke the scallions that provided shade in his spot. It was not because he was venting his anger since there was no sweetness at all. Well, let's not say it's absolute. I was a little hopeful. He laid the broken scallions in a place well exposed to sunlight. Today, he started his work a little late because of the scallions, but it didn't matter. The work was drip, 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 briefly watering the crops and staring blankly at the hole in the ceiling. Still, something had appeared to relieve his boredom. When he stared blankly at the ceiling for a while, the scallions had grown significantly in the meantime. Do scallions usually grow this fast? He even checked the time on his smartphone to see if it was just his imagination. The scallions grew about 10 centimeters per hour. An astonishing growth rate. Sejun, who had no farming experience, thought this was impossible. Is it because they were grown in the tower? There was nothing else to suspect. They were just scallions that he had bought from the market. If the seeds had truly been scallions that grew 10 centimeters per hour, they would have been called golden scallions. But there's no growth from these guys. Sejun glanced at the spots where he had planted cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes next to the scallions. If the soil was the reason for the scallions' miraculous growth, then other things would grow well too. However, there was no change in the ground. Is this soil only suitable for growing scallions? With a suspicious mind, he looked more closely. Upon closer inspection, the soil where the sweet potatoes were planted remained the same, but the soil where the cherry tomatoes were planted seemed slightly bulging. Sejun lay down on the ground and stared intently at the bulging soil. Ah, there it was. A green stem with a shiny yellow head emerged shyly between the soil, revealing its appearance. 1, 2, 3. There were a total of 52 sprouts. Sejun stared at the cherry tomato sprouts for a long time. So cute. He felt a sense of pride just by looking at the plants he had grown himself and seeing them grow so well. It made him feel accomplished. Beep beep. Beep beep. May 15th, 6 a.m. Sejun welcomed the 6th day's morning. Yesterday, he spent the whole day just looking at the cherry tomato sprouts. They didn't grow as fast as the scallions, but watching them grow little by little over time made him feel full even without eating. Sejun got up lightly from his seat. Lately, his body was getting lighter day by day. At first, he thought it was because the fatigue from overwork had been relieved, but recently, he began to think that it might not be the case. Let's see. Have our sprouts grown a lot? As soon as he got up, Sejun went to see the cherry tomato sprouts without washing his face or eating. He was very curious about how much they had grown while he was sleeping. Oh, the ends of the sprouts, their greenish-yellow heads, were slightly split. However, a dark shadow blocked the sprouts. The scallions had grown back to Sejun's height, blocking the light that should have reached the cherry tomato sprouts. Crunch! Crunch! Sejun mercilessly broke off the scallion leaves. Phew! After breaking all the scallions, Sejun hurried to the pond. Splash! Splash! He quickly finished washing his face and gulp, 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 filled a water bottle and plastic container with water to water the soil around the cherry tomato sprouts, as well as the scallions and sweet potato field. I don't hate you, you know. He especially gave the scallions plenty of water. When he finished watering, gurgle, his stomach demanded payment, as if there could be no unpaid labor. Time to eat breakfast. Sejun put a scallion he had just broken into his mouth. Crunch! Crunch! After eating only scallion leaves yesterday instead of sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes, he thought he could satisfy his hunger well enough. His stomach didn't feel empty, nor did he feel drained of energy. Somehow, it felt like carbohydrates were being absorbed. And, most importantly, there was plenty of it. Growing about 180 centimeters per day, there was actually so much that it was difficult to handle. For now, I need to dry them well and store them. Looking at the current situation, it seemed unlikely that the well-growing leeks would suddenly stop growing. But Sejun decided to prepare for the unexpected. No one can predict affairs. Who would have thought that he would be stranded in an unknown place like this? He decided to plant the remaining cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes for more food in the future. Thud. Thud. Sejun dug into the soil and planted the cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes. And then, trickle, trickle, grow big and strong. He gave them plenty of water along with his encouragement and sat on his designated seat, a flat rock where the sun shined well. He felt a sense of accomplishment after doing something productive. The sky is nice. The blue sky was clear and beautiful. The human heart was fickle, he thought to himself. Despite feeling suffocated yesterday, he found the sky to be pleasant today. Come to think of it, he had been staring at the sky for days. I never really looked at the sky for days when I was working at the company. I'm living a good life. However, that feeling was short-lived. I feel like something's missing. If only I had coffee here. He really wanted an iced Americano with an extra shot. He missed his city life. As Sejun looked at the sky, reminiscing about city life. Beep, beep. He received a notification that his smartphone battery had dropped below 20%. He had set the screen to low power mode and only looked at it when needed. But he couldn't completely prevent battery consumption. Let's charge it with this for now. Sejun opened his laptop and pressed the power button. A smartphone that consumed less power than a laptop and informed him of the time to wake up and sleep was more useful. Blink. The laptop screen lit up, showing an Excel window with work he had been doing. It was an estimate to send to a client, which he hadn't finished at the company and had intended to complete at home. Click. Sejun closed the Excel window without any hesitation. Of course, he didn't save anything. Although it was an estimate he had worked on for several days, he didn't feel any regret. Besides, it was already too late. Someone else will do it instead. He felt a little sorry for the person who would take over, but it wasn't a situation where he could do anything about it. Sejun connected his smartphone and laptop and charged his phone. He also turned on low power mode for the laptop to reduce battery consumption. And while his smartphone was charging, he looked at the cherry tomato sprouts. No matter how many times he looked, it made him feel good. As he was watching the cherry tomato sprouts for a while, drip, 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 water dropped from above. What? Is it raining? Sejun knew that wasn't the case, even as he spoke. Apart from a few flaws, the tower always had clear weather. Could it be a monster? He got goosebumps imagining a monster looking down at him and drooling. Sejun hastily looked up, but, in the hole in the ceiling, there was a small white rabbit, drooling as it looked down through the hole. Is that a monster too? Sejun was wondering if the rabbit he saw in front of him was a ferocious monster when suddenly, squeak, as the rabbit's eyes met Sejun's, it let out a cute cry and jumped down from the hole. Boing! Oh, it's dangerous. Sejun instinctively reached out his hand towards the falling rabbit, not knowing if it was a monster or not. However, the rabbit adjusted its falling direction using its long ears, avoiding Sejun's hand, stepped on his shoulder with both feet, and safely landed on the ground. It was quite embarrassing to have his hand outstretched in the air. At that moment, squeak, the rabbit cautiously approached him while walking on two legs and pointed to the scallion with its trembling finger. Seeing it walk on two legs, it was not just an ordinary rabbit. Can you eat this? Squeak, the rabbit answered, nodding its head vigorously. There was a desperate plea in its eyes for approval. Here, snap. Sejun broke off a whole scallion leaf and gave it to the rabbit. Squeak, crunch, crunch. The rabbit started eating the scallion leaf Sejun handed over without hesitation. Snap, snap. While the rabbit was eating the scallion, Sejun broke off more leaves. He decided to break them all. From then on, Sejun planned to cut the scallions once at 6 a.m. and once at 2 p.m. so the cherry tomato seedlings could get some sun. Crunch, crunch. The rabbit was still eagerly eating the scallion. So far, it had eaten a length equivalent to 2 finger joints. Sejun watched the rabbit and then looked back at the cherry tomatoes. Oh, the tips of the cherry tomato seedlings were gradually opening. Soon, they would have leaves. How much time had passed? Gurgle. The sound of the rabbit sleeping could be heard next to him. It seemed sleepy now that its stomach was full. Its soft snoring was quite cute. At that moment, squeak, feeling Sejun's gaze, the rabbit woke up with a start. Shake. The rabbit shook its head to get rid of its sleepiness. And then, squeak, it jumped with a powerful cry. Flick. The rabbit held a scallion in one hand and easily climbed back up to the hole. Squeak. Before leaving, the rabbit bowed its head to Sejun in gratitude. You just eat and run away. Although it was ungrateful, Sejun waved goodbye. It was a brief encounter, but it was pleasant. While Sejun waved, the rabbit left. Even though it was only for a moment, it felt empty. Sejun left the emptiness behind and looked back at the cherry tomato seedlings. In the meantime, the seedlings had gathered strength and spread their leaves even wider. Grow up, guys. A little later, why, as if knowing Sejun was waiting, the cherry tomato seedlings began to unfold one by one, revealing 2 bright green leaves each. The sight of the delicate but vibrant leaves emerging was quite wondrous. Beep. Beep. May 15, 10 p.m. The alarm to announce the evening rang. However, he didn't want to sleep tonight. He wanted to keep watching the seedlings grow and then fall asleep. Splat. Splat. Sejun woke up to the feeling of something lightly hitting his cheek. Huh? What is it? When he opened his eyes, the rabbit that had run away yesterday was slapping his cheek with its paw to wake him up. What time is it? Sejun checked the time. May 16th, 5 a.m. It was an hour earlier than his usual waking time. But what's with your outfit? The rabbit wore a straw hat with holes for its ears to stick out and held a watering can in its hand. At that moment, squeak, another rabbit's cry was heard. Huh? Sejun looked towards the sound, and there was another slender rabbit wearing an apron. And then, Nod, the rabbit that made eye contact with Sejun politely greeted him. What's going on here? Day 7 of being lost. Sejun woke up a little early, and a rabbit couple had joined the cave. Chapter 4, Lighting a Fire. Sejun quickly sensed the pink atmosphere flowing between the two. Are you two a couple? Squeak, squeak. They both nodded at the same time. Damn, being caught between a rabbit couple. He once had no friends with matching free time in college, so he had to eat with a couple. It was awkward, but he couldn't eat alone for a whole semester, so he joined them. One day while eating together, a sudden tension arose between the couple, leading to a heated argument. Sejun felt very uncomfortable while being stuck between them. And then I acquired the skill to eat by myself. After that, he vowed never to eat with a couple again. Squeak, squeak. Feeling Sejun's strange mood, the husband rabbit rubbed its face against Sejun's hand, trying desperately to win his approval to stay. It was a desperate gesture to protect their home. Working so hard to protect their family, Sejun's heart softened. He felt ashamed for still being stuck in the past. That's right. They were a couple, and these two are a married couple. Sejun didn't know the profound world of a married couple. All right, you can stay here, but it's not for free. He didn't expect anything in return. Squeak, squeak. Upon Sejun's approval, the rabbit couple nodded vigorously and ran to a corner of the cave, digging a burrow to create their own dwelling. A burrow? Watching the rabbit dig the burrow, Sejun had a sudden idea. He wondered if they could dig a burrow to get out of here. Stupid me. I only thought about the hole above because it was there. Rabbit, squeak. The husband rabbit, busy digging the ground, peeked out at Sejun's call. Can you dig a tunnel to get out of here? Squeak. The rabbit thought for a moment and shook its head. No. Swish, swish. The rabbit began drawing a picture on the ground. It drew the cave where Sejun was and started digging deep underneath. And then, whoosh, it poured water from the watering can into the dug hole. The bottom of Sejun's cave filled with water. Ah, the bottom is all water. Squeak. The rabbit nodded. Okay, keep doing what you were doing. Squeak. The rabbit went back to digging its burrow. At that moment, beep, beep, the alarm rang. The smartphone battery was at 100%. Considering the discharge rate of the laptop, It seemed like he could recharge it once more. May 16, 6 a.m. Sejun's daily routine began. First, he checked the tomato seedlings. Good job, guys. Tea. Now, the green leaves were fully blossomed. There was still no news from the sweet potato field. Sejun went to the pond, washed his face, and watered the field. And then, snap, snap, he broke off some leaves so the tomato seedlings could get some sunlight. The more he broke the leaves, the thicker and more split the stems became, producing more leaves. At first, there were about 3 leaves per plant, but now there were 8. Will it become chore to break these later? Sejun dried the torn leaves in the sunlight. The leaves that were already in the sun had now hardened, almost moisture-free. Crunch. Sejun finished his morning work while eating the freshly torn leaves. Now, after 8 hours, he just had to break the leaves once more and water them to finish the day's work. Sejun, who had finished his work, sat in his designated seat and stared blankly at the sky. How long had he been staring at the sky? Ook, ook, boo-woo, boo-woo, huh? What's this noise? Sejun looked in the direction where the noise came from. It was the sound coming from the rabbit couple's burrow. The sound stopped abruptly. What was that? Just as Sejun was about to stare at the sky again and zone out. Ook, ook, boo-woo, boo-woo. The sound was heard again. Listening carefully, it was the sound of panting. No way, these guys. As soon as the rabbit couple made their home, they began breeding activities. Afterward, the breeding activities continued several more times. A few hours later, at 2 p.m., Sejun got up to do his afternoon work. At that time, peek, the rabbit couple came out of the burrow happily together, and quickly started doing the farm work Sejun was about to do. Peep peep, swoosh, the husband rabbit hummed while watering the crops with a watering can, and vzz, snip snip, the wife rabbit accompanied her husband's song by cutting the leaves with scissors. The husband sang and the wife followed. It reminded him of the phrase, husband sings, wife follows. However, what bothered Sejun was something else. What are those things? It turned out that the watering can held by the husband rabbit and the apron worn by the wife rabbit were items. Water kept coming out of the watering can non-stop, and the apron seemed to have a space magic on it. As the wife rabbit took out farming tools like scissors or shovels whenever she needed them, he was a bit envious. They had such equipment. He had to dig and tear with his hands and carry water. Watching the rabbits work made time pass quickly. But soon, he got bored. At that moment, he saw the light passing through the pet bottle, refracting and concentrating into a strong light. Seeing that, an idea came to mind. He remembered a scene from a TV show where survival experts used pet bottles filled with water to start a fire. Should I try to start a fire? It seemed like the well-dried leaves would burn well. Alright. Sejun got up and collected the well-dried leaves. And then, swoosh, swoosh, he tore the leaves thinly to gather them well in the center, so the fire could catch easily. And Sejun began to focus the light on the dried green onion leaves using the pet bottle filled with water like a magnifying glass. Squeak, squeak. When Sejun stayed still in the same position for more than 20 minutes, the rabbit couple approached him. They seemed curious about what the farm owner was doing. About 10 minutes passed, and the rabbits started dozing off, seemingly bored. At that moment, smoke started to rise from the finely torn pile of green onion leaves. An ember was created. It's working. Sejun concentrated even more on shining the light from the pet bottle on the ember. The ember grew stronger, and the smoke became thicker. Woo, woo. Sejun carefully blew air into the finely torn leaves containing the ember. The rabbit couple woke up from the sound of the blowing and looked at Sejun. And then, squeak, squeak, they were astonished to see the smoking green onion leaves. After blowing for a while, the fire started and flames burst out. He. I did it. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple looked at Sejun with admiring eyes. They didn't have any items that could start a fire among their belongings. The first thing Sejun did when the fire started was to roast green onions to eat. He just wanted to fill his stomach with something warm. The dried green onions had become too hard to eat, like firewood. So he roasted the ones he had picked today. As the surface of the green onion turned black from the roasting, Sejun lifted it by holding the end. And then, ouch! Hot! Hoo! He placed the blackened green onion on another leaf and peeled off the burnt skin while blowing on his fingers. He lifted the roasted green onion and put the peeled part in his mouth. Pooch pooch! So sweet! Sejun's eyes widened at the incredible taste. It was like sugar was running wild in his mouth. An intense sweetness exploded. Sejun quickly threw a few more green onions into the flames and began eating the roasted green onions hurriedly. Squeak! Seeing Sejun's reaction, the husband rabbit bravely placed a green onion into the fire. And shortly after, squeak, squeak, the rabbit couple ate the peeled roasted leeks with emotional expressions. All three of them ate with enthusiasm, getting black smudges on their faces. On the seventh day of being trapped in the tower, Sejun went to sleep after filling his stomach with warm food for the first time. Beep beep, beep beep. May 19th, 6 a.m. On the 10th day of the disaster. All right. Sejun got up energetically today as well. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple, who had woken up first, greeted Sejun. Yeah. Good morning. Splish splash. Splish splash. Sejun went to the pond to wash his face and sat down in his spot. Squeak. The wife rabbit brought the roasted green onion. Thanks, Sejun said as he received the food. Tilde munch tilde gulp. Tilde munch tilde gulp. While eating the roasted green onions, Sejun looked at the field where the crops were planted. The green onions had already been harvested, and the ground was damp. The rabbits, who had woken up early, had already finished their work. On top of that, the wife rabbit had prepared a meal. It was so nice that they took care of it themselves. However, there was even less to do in a place where there was already little to do. I need to move around a bit. Today, he decided to transplant the cherry tomatoes that he had put off. It was time to transplant them because if they grew too close together, they wouldn't be able to absorb nutrients properly. Sejun dug the soil with his hands, made a place to transplant the cherry tomatoes, and, with a small spoon-sized shovel, the husband rabbit carefully scooped and moved one by one. They also moved the 6 new sprouts they had planted later. A total of 58 sprouts were planted in 6 rows of 10 each. Phew! Seeing the neatly planted sprouts in a row brought a sense of pride. Sejun was proud of doing even small things these days. As soon as Sejun finished transplanting the cherry tomatoes, he started a new task. Making torches. He wove several leaves together to make a handle and wrapped the end with finely torn dried leaves hundreds of times. Dried green onion leaves seemed to be suitable for torches as they maintained the fire for a long time. The green onion leaves burned for so long that there was no need to manage the fire separately. At first, it would have been tedious to continue, but now he found pleasure in using his will, body, and effort to create something essential to his life. After investing several hours, he made a torch and an alarm rang to notify it was time to sleep. May 20th, 6 a.m. On the 11th day of the disaster, the morning dawned. All right, right, good morning. As soon as he got up, he greeted the rabbit couple and went to the pond to wash his face. The pond was brighter than yesterday. Sejun, who had always been uncomfortable with the darkness when washing his face, installed a torch by the pond first. Nice. He. Sejun looked at the burning torch and brought his face closer to the pond to wash his face. At that moment, splash! A fish suddenly jumped out of the pond and tried to bite Sejun's face. Ugh! Sejun hurriedly leaned back. The fishy smell of water from the fish's body brushed past his nose. He barely dodged it. The fish that fell to the ground wriggled to return to the water. What is this? Sejun, who was flustered, approached the wriggling fish and took a closer look. It had golden stripes on a black background on its body and sharp teeth. He could have had his nose cut off if he was just a little bit late. Sejun pushed the fish to the opposite side of the pond so it couldn't escape. He then examined the pond. Oh, inside the pond, several fish of the same species that had just attacked Sejun were swimming. Why are they here? While Sejun was thinking about the reason, the fish wriggled to escape back to the pond. I don't have time for this. Sejun hurriedly caught the fish that had fallen to the ground. On the 11th day of being trapped in the tower, they finally had the chance to eat fish. Chapter 5. The green cherry tomato ripens. Sejun's hand tightly gripped the fish, which struggled and opened its mouth wide to attack Sejun, then clamped down hard. Snap! Snap! Sharp teeth clashed, making a sharp sound. Each time, Sejun held on tighter, fearing that if he lost his grip, he might lose a finger. Sejun held the fish tightly and ran to the spot below the hole in the ceiling where the fire was. Meanwhile, the fish, which had been fiercely resisting, began to breathe faster, and its body went limp. Upon reaching the fire, Sejun carefully laid down a single green onion leaf on the ground. He carefully placed the fish on the leaf and covered it with another green onion leaf. And then, swoosh! He tore the green onion leaves to the thickness of a finger to use them as strings, wrapped the fish in 2 pieces of the torn leaves in a cross shape, and tied them together. I hope this tastes amazing. Sejun carefully placed the fish wrapped in green onion leaves in the center of the fire pit. And then, he waited. He watched for a long time. Sniff, sniff. Ah! It smells great. The rich, oily scent melted into the rising steam and began to fill the cave. He remembered his childhood. When his mother was preparing a meal, the smell of food would spread from the kitchen and take over the entire house. When he came home after school and the smell filled the house, his mood would lift if it was one of his favorite side dishes. Back then, even the waiting time before eating was happy. Gurgle! A noise interrupted Sejun's thoughts. He was hungry, but he held back. He was determined to fill his empty stomach with something delicious. Gurgle! Hold on just a bit longer. I'll put something really delicious in you. Sejun consoled his stomach and patiently waited. He waited for it to be completely cooked. And when the scent became deeper and richer, I can't wait any longer. I can't stand it. Sejun used the dried, hardened green onion leaves to remove the grilled fish wrapped in palm leaves from the fire. He carefully untied the knot that held the green onion leaves together. Whoosh! When he untied the string and removed the green onion leaves, a dense aroma of fish mixed with the scent of green onion leaves spread. Wow! Sejun marveled at the sight of the moist, glistening fish. Gulp! Sejun folded the fish in half, tore off a piece of protruding flesh, and put it in his mouth. It was perfectly cooked. There was no fishy taste, and the chewy texture was felt as soon as he bit into it, with the savory flavor spreading in his mouth the more he chewed. Amazing! Gobble gobble! Sejun devoured the fish in a frenzy. I finished it already. Sejun looked at the fish with only bones left and wore a crestfallen expression. At that moment, peep, peep, a sound of disappointment came from the side. Sejun wasn't the only one disappointed. Sejun looked at the source of the sound, and the rabbit couple was wearing a lost expression as they stared at the fish bones left. No way, no. It couldn't be, rabbits eating fish. But on second thought, the rabbit couple preferred to roast and eat the leaves like Sejun. Do you guys eat meat too? Sejun asked. Peep, as if to say they also just found out now. The rabbit couple simultaneously turned their heads. They seemed annoyed that Sejun had eaten it all by himself. Sorry, I didn't know you guys eat meat too. Sejun scratched his head and got up to go to the pond. He intended to catch a fish. The number of fish in the pond had increased since the last time he saw them. But where are they coming from? As Sejun examined the pond with a torch, he noticed a small hole about the size of a hand in the corner of the pond. A fish entered through the hole at that moment. Ah! They're coming in through that hole. It seemed they were attracted to the light of the torch. Sejun finally figured out where the fish were coming from. Unconsciously, Sejun brought the torch closer to the pond to take a closer look. Splash! A fish jumped towards the torch, opening its mouth. Whoosh! Sejun quickly lifted the torch to avoid the fish. Snap! The fish bit the air. Splash! The fish that failed to hunt returned to the water. What's going on? Sejun cautiously brought the torch close to the water again. Splash! Splash! The fish jumped up to hunt the torch. Whoosh! Sejun lifted the torch to avoid them. Snap! Snap! Splash! Splash! The fish failed to hunt again and returned to the water. Aha! Sejun realized what the fish were reacting to. The fish would jump when they saw the torch moving near the surface, thinking it was prey. Now that he knew how to make the fish jump, catching them was easy. Sejun shook the torch near the pond. Splash! A fish opened its mouth and jumped towards the torch. Here it comes. Sejun focused on the movement of the fish. And when the fish reached its highest point and was about to fall back down, now, thwack! Sejun swung the torch at the rising fish, knocking it out of the pond and onto the ground. The fallen fish writhed to breathe. In the meantime, thwack! Thwack! Sejun sent 2 more fish to the ground. Holding the 3 fish that had stopped breathing, he approached the fire pit. Squeak! 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 The rabbit couple cheered for Sejun as if they were never upset, sending him admiring gazes. Ahem! Sejun's shoulders straightened. At that moment, he felt like a hero. Squeak! Squeak! The male rabbit brought some green onion leaves and volunteered to help with the cooking. Rustle! Rustle! Next to them, the female rabbit tore the green onion leaves into small pieces to make strings. It's done, Sejun spoke as he placed the 3rd fish on the fire. All that was left was to wrap the fish in green onion leaves and tie them up so the cooking process can be started quickly. And again, they waited happy. On the 11th day of being trapped in the tower, Sejun and the rabbit couple filled their bellies with fish and went to sleep. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. June 19th, 6 a.m. It was the morning of the 41st day of being trapped in the tower. Let's get moving. Sejun woke up and approached the pond. However, there was now an additional small pond next to the old one, which hadn't been there before. In order to avoid the fish's attacks, a small faucet-like water stream was connected next to the pond. Sejun washed his face and fetched water from there. Splish! Splash! Sejun washed his face and went to the field. In the field, centered around Sejun's designated rock, there were green onions in the front, cherry tomatoes that had grown to the height of Sejun's knees on the left, and sprouts of sweet potatoes on the right. Finally, the long-awaited sweet potato sprouts appeared. All the crops Sejun had planted on the first day of the crisis had safely taken root at the top. I'm proud. A lot had happened in the meantime. On the 32nd day of being trapped in the tower, a blue moon appeared again. With that, Sejun realized that the blue moon cycle on the floor he was on was 30 days. And a few days ago, in their burrow, Mrs. Rabbit gave birth to 6 babies, and the family grew. Peep! Peep! As the energetic cries of the baby rabbits came from inside the burrow, Daddy Rabbit busily started watering the green onion leaves. I have to prepare breakfast. Seeing the busy rabbit couple, Sejun wanted to help them. Snap! Snap! He broke off 10 green onion leaves and put them on the fire, and the rest were laid on the ground to dry. Then he approached the pond and waved the torch from side to side over the water. Splash! Splash! The fish that jumped up to hunt the torchlight. Sejun swung the torch towards them. Thump! Today, luckily, it was a one-hit kill. Flutter, flutter. He covered 2 fish with green onion leaves, tied them with stems, and put them on the fire. In the meantime, he took out the well-cooked green onions and ate them. It's comforting to have something warm inside. After eating the cooked green onions, Sejun watered the crops and spent some time staring blankly. Sniff, sniff. A delicious smell began to spread. Tap, tap. Sejun began to cut the strings that tied the fish wrapped in leaves as he took them out of the fire. Just then, the husband rabbit came out of the burrow, wobbling. Rabbit, Sejun called the daddy rabbit. Peep. The husband rabbit seemed to be tired from parenting. His response lacked energy. Share this with your wife. Peep. The moved husband rabbit hurriedly took the fish and went into the burrow. However, peep, peep, as the baby rabbits woke up, the rabbit couple could only eat the fish after a while. Beep beep, beep beep. June 19, 5 a.m. On the 50th day of the crisis, the smartphone rang the alarm for the last time and died. Fortunately, the rabbits woke up precisely at 5 a.m. and went to bed at 7 p.m. It seemed that there would be no change of the time difference due to the continuous daylight, if they followed the rabbits' daily rhythm. You did well. Sejun put the dead smartphone in his bag with the already dead laptop. At that time, peep, peep, the rabbit couple, who seemed to have become familiar with parenting by now, came out of the burrow and greeted him. Oh, good morning. Swoosh, swish, swish. While the husband rabbit watered the crops with a watering can and the wife rabbit cut the green onion leaves. Thump, thump. Sejun caught fish from the pond. Then, holding the caught fish, he went to the fire and wrapped the fish in leaves and put them in the fire. The wife rabbit took out the roasted green onions, beautifully arranged them on the leaves, and handed them to Sejun before going back into the burrow with her husband. They went inside to prepare breakfast for their babies. Munch, munch, as he satisfied his hunger by eating the green onion. Sejun noticed a small yellow flower blooming at the end of a cherry tomato branch. He remembered what he had read on the internet. If there were no bees or wind, pollination wouldn't happen. There was a gentle breeze in the cave, but Sejun decided to make sure pollination took place by carefully rubbing the flower with a fish bone. Please work. Please work. Sejun pollinated the flower with his earnest heart. Let's get moving. As soon as Sejun got up, he approached the rock wall of the cave. And, swoosh, he used a fishbone to etch a line on the rock wall. Next to it, there were 2 vertical lines and 10 lines above. It had been 61 days since getting trapped in the tower. He had been recording the date like this since the smartphone battery died. It's already been 61 days. Just as Sejun's mood began to sink, the cave became noisy. Beep, beep, baby. As morning came, the baby rabbits came out of the burrow one after another, following their parents. Beep, beep. The rabbit couple greeted Sejun in the morning and asked for help. All right, let's go. Lately, Sejun occasionally looked after the baby rabbits. It wasn't a big deal, just making sure they didn't go anywhere dangerous. While Sejun watched the baby rabbits, the husband rabbit watered the field, and the wife rabbit cut the leaves to prepare breakfast. The baby rabbits stayed quiet when given food, so the meal was peaceful. After the meal, the rabbit couple went back into the burrow with their babies. Sejun washed his face and went to the cherry tomato field. The cherry tomato field had become a flower garden with more and more flowers blooming. And Sejun lightly shook the branches with cherry tomato flowers. Please work. Please work. Since there were now too many flowers to pollinate one by one, he lightly shook the branches and recited the pollination spell. That's when, a tiny green cherry tomato, smaller than a bean, appeared between the fallen petals. On the 61st day of being trapped in the tower, the green cherry tomato finally ripened. It was the day before the blue moon. Hello everyone, it's my first time translating, so please let me know in the comments if you notice any mistakes in my translations. Also, I started translating after the comics came out, which are very well drawn, so please check them out too. Chapter 6, Awakening. Looking at the newly transplanted cherry tomatoes, Sejun also looked at the other cherry tomato trees with a curious mind, wondering if they were any different. There they are. The space is now occupied by 5 cherry tomato. Sejun felt pleased, thinking about the many more cherry tomato that would grow in the future. He laughed with delight, imagining cherry tomatoes filling the entire field. His mood was too good for such a small thing. In the afternoon, the inside of the cave became busy. Peep, peep, the rabbit couple began to block the entrance to their burrow. Sejun realized that the blue moon was about to start by watching the rabbits' behavior. Sejun hurriedly moved too. To prepare for the monsters that would come, he put out the fire, buried or moved anything that had a smell, and tried his best to erase the scent. And a few hours later, the sunlight turned blue, and Sejun faced his third blue moon. Roar, screech, the roars of the monsters could be heard. No matter how many times I hear it, I can't get used to it. Every time he heard the roars, his heart throbbed, and goosebumps rose all over his body. He thought this blue moon would pass without any problem. However, thud, thud, one monster started to roam above the cave where Sejun was. And sniff, sniff, the red-furred monster began to seriously sniff the scent towards the hole in the ground. Oh no! Did it notice something? Sejun unknowingly held his breath and just hoped the monster would go away. But, sniff, sniff, the monster continued to sniff. How long had it been sniffing? Screech, when a monster's roar was heard from afar. Roar, thud, thud, the red-furred monster roared and ran towards the sound. Slap, slap, Sejun woke up from the husband rabbit's slaps. Peep, the husband rabbit looked at Sejun with a worried expression. When did I fall asleep? Did he faint? He had heard that there were cases of fainting when hearing the roar of a strong monster. Tremble, ugh, why is it so cold? His body had been tense when he fainted. Moreover, the temperature was much lower at the end of the cave. Having slept in such a place, his body couldn't be in good shape. It seemed like he caught a cold. Swoosh! Sejun struggled to approach the wall where he recorded the date and drew a line. And, I need a fire. Sejun, shivering, went to the fireplace. He needed to light the fire again. Tremble. With trembling hands, Sejun held a water bottle, directed sunlight towards the dry leaves, and created a spark. 30 minutes later, phew, crackle. Sejun barely managed to create a spark, lit the fire, and crouched down at the fireplace to roast a green onion. And, gobble gobble, he ate the roasted green onion eagerly. All I can do right now is eat well. Sejun went to the pond and caught 5 fish to cook after eating the green onion and regaining some energy. As Sejun was fighting off his cold by eating, peep, the husband rabbit called Sejun. What? Peep, where the husband rabbit was pointing. The cherry tomatoes that were smaller than beans just yesterday had grown to the size of golf balls. But why is the color like this? The cherry tomato was bluish. Is it ripe? It couldn't have ripened overnight, but since it was so big, Sejun touched the cherry tomato. Tap. The cherry tomato fell off easily as if it was completely ripe. Wow! While Sejun was marveling at the huge blue cherry tomato, you have achieved the feat of harvesting fruit containing the energy of the blue moon. Transparent blue letters appeared on a window in front of him. What's this? It's a message window. The tower's manager watches your amazing feat. The tower's manager examines you closely. The tower's manager frowns. Why is he frowning all of a sudden? The tower's manager realizes you are an uninvited guest. The tower's manager wants to hide his mistake. What? A mistake, a mistake. So my coming here was a mistake? Then send me back. The tower's manager considers killing you to destroy the evidence. Excuse me. I don't have to leave. You said I achieved some feats, right? Please spare me. The tower's manager awakens you. You have awakened. Oh, finally, I have awakened. I decided to forgive him for wanting to kill me. Until now, survival had been the priority, but the reason Sejun came to the tower was to awaken. Now I don't have to buy 150 million ticket to awaken. He. Now, just climb the tower. The tower's manager assigns you a job. You have become a tower farmer. Farmer, job trait. You won't get minor illnesses. Job trait. You'll be friendly with nature. Job trait. You'll gain experience when harvesting crops. Status window. It can't be. There must be something wrong. Sejun wanted to believe desperately. Sejun called the status window with all his heart. But, Park Sejun LV. 1. Talent. Mediocre all-rounder. Stats. Strength. 1. Stamina. 1. Agility. 1. Magic. 1. Job. Tower farmer. Skills. None. This is my status window. Talent determines base stats and stat increases when leveling up. However, Sejun's talent is mediocre all-rounder, which means just average. There wasn't a single glimpse of hope in the status window. Indeed, lotteries are better when you don't scratch them. That way, you can at least daydream. Sigh. I'm a mediocre all-rounder, and my job is a farmer. What's your job? Tower farmer. It was embarrassing to even think about answering someone with his job. Should I just go back to farming? It seemed difficult to make big money in the tower even if he managed to survive here. Goodbye, Serang. It seems destiny doesn't allow us to be more than a star and fan. Sejun decided to remain as Serang's fan, holding back tears. Then he looked at the blue cherry tomato in his hand. Magic cherry tomato imbued the energy of the blue moon. A cherry tomato grown in the tower, it is delicious as it has absorbed enough nutrients. The energy of the blue moon enhances its flavor even more. Upon consumption, magic power permanently increases by 0.05. Cultivator, Tower Farmer Park Sejun. Expiration date, 30 days. Grade A. It was an item that, albeit slightly, raised one's stats. Maybe I can make some money by selling this later. Just as Sejun began to have new hopes, a quest has been generated. A quest. Offer the fruit containing Blue Moon's energy to the tower's manager. Reward, 1 job skill. If refused, death. What? Just ask for it. Don't make it seem like there's a choice. It wasn't a quest, it was a threat. Did you have to take everything? My dreams, my blue cherry tomatoes. It was unfair, but Sejun had only one choice. Here, along with Sejun's words, the blue cherry tomato in his hand disappeared. You have completed the quest. As a reward for completing the quest, you have acquired the job skill, seed sowing LV. 1. Are you kidding me? Why do we even need a skill for seed sowing? Sejun grumbled and got angry, but after that, the tower's manager said nothing. Sigh. Sejun sighed and checked the skill he received. Job skill, seed sowing LV. 1. Slightly increases the germination rate when seeds are planted. At least, thanks to the job's characteristic of not being bothered by minor illnesses. The body aches had disappeared. On the 61st day of being trapped in the tower, he awakened and obtained the job of tower farmer. As soon as Sejun opened his eyes, he approached the cave wall. Whoosh! With a fishbone, he completed the 15th line on the wall. It had been 75 days since he came to the cave. Splish! Splash! Sejun washed his face in the small pond and came to his senses. And then, swish swish, holding a torch in his left hand, he waved it left and right over the large pond. Splash! The fish that spotted the torch jumped up. As he awakened, he could know the names of the fish. the name written above their heads. Piranha. Thwack. He struck the piranha with a club in his right hand. The club was made by tying several layers of dried scallion leaves with a rope. Thwack. Thwack. The piranhas struck by the club flapped vigorously on the ground. In this way, Sejun caught 5 piranhas. The number of piranhas he had to catch increased due to the baby rabbits. A moment later, you have defeated a piranha. You have acquired 2 experience points. When the piranhas could no longer breathe and died, he gained experience points. Since awakening, Sejun could gain experience points. Thanks to this, he reached level 2 already. However, he did not hunt piranhas recklessly. At this point, survival was much more important than experience points. If the piranha's egg were to run out, both Sejun and the rabbits would be in trouble. So, he caught only as many as he needed. While Sejun was catching piranhas and preparing breakfast, the rabbit couple also started their morning farming. And something had changed. Peep, peep. The baby rabbits started helping with farming, following their parents. Now they were carrying scallion leaves, trying hard to help. Upon awakening, Sejun was able to learn the identity of the rabbits. The names above the rabbits' heads. Farmer White Rabbit. This was the true identity of the rabbits. He didn't know what had happened to them, but they seemed to have lost their farm, wandered around, and settled here after finding the field Sejun had created. At that moment, a delicious aroma began to fill the air. Before he knew it, the piranha dish was ready. Let's eat breakfast. The hungry baby rabbits quickly dropped the scallion leaves they were carrying and ran over. After eating their fill, the baby rabbits went back to their burrow to take a nap. They were still young and needed a lot of sleep. Alright, let's start harvesting then. Squeak, squeak. At Sejun's words, the rabbit couple made a serious expression. Today was a very important day. Let's see. Sejun went to the cherry tomato field and examined the ripe red cherry tomatoes. Good. They're ripe. Pop. Sejun picked a ripe cherry tomato. You have obtained a well-ripened magical cherry tomato. Your occupation experience increases slightly. You have gained 10 experience points. Magical cherry tomato. Magical cherry tomato. A cherry tomato grown inside the tower. It is delicious and full of nutrients. When consumed, it breaks down 10 grams of body fat and increases mana by 0.1 for 10 minutes. The effect stacks up to 10 times within an hour. When consumed by a non-awakened person, it breaks down 10 grams of body fat and revitalizes the body. Cultivator, Tower Farmer Park Sejun. Expiration date, 30 days. Grade, A. Wow. This time, it was an item as well. Moreover, just by eating the magical cherry tomato, it could increase mana up to 1. Thunk, thunk. Sejun began to harvest the cherry tomatoes diligently. When he accidentally picked an unripe cherry tomato. You have obtained an unripe cherry tomato. Your occupation experience does not increase. You have gained 7 experience points. The experience points were reduced, and the occupation experience did not increase. Moreover, the cherry tomato turned into a regular cherry tomato instead of an item. After that, Sejun carefully harvested the cherry tomatoes. And you have obtained a well-ripened magical cherry tomato. Your occupation experience increases slightly. You have gained 10 experience points. You have leveled up. You have obtained 1 bonus stat. By harvesting 53 magical cherry tomato, Sejun leveled up twice as a bonus. Thanks to that, Sejun reached level 4. Chapter 7, Rebellion. Sejun put the harvested cherry tomatoes in his mouth without even washing them. There was no need to wash them, as there was no fine dust or pollution in this place. With a crunch, as he chewed on the ripe, red cherry tomato. Splash! The skin of the cherry tomato split, and the juice inside sprayed like a mist in his mouth. It was a perfect harmony of flavors that couldn't be described in words. Bang! Bang! The sour and sweet bombs exploded like fireworks at a festival, alternating and confusing his taste buds. Wow! Only an exclamation came from Sejun's mouth. Without a word, Sejun continued to chew on the cherry tomato and savored the taste until it disappeared. You have consumed a magical cherry tomato. You have broken down 10 grams of fat, increasing your magic power by 0.1 for 10 minutes. A message appeared saying that his magic power had increased, but it didn't matter. Sejun put another cherry tomato in his mouth and continued the feast. Squeak! Seeing Sejun's reaction to the cherry tomatoes, the husband rabbit picked up a cherry tomato, tilting his head. Is it that delicious? The cherry tomato was quite big for the rabbit, so it couldn't put it in its mouth in one bite like Sejun. Gulp! So, the rabbit bit into the cherry tomato. Then, the juice began to overflow through the hole in the skin. What a waste of food! Slurp! The husband rabbit, flustered, sucked the cherry tomato juice so it wouldn't spill. Wasting food was a sin. This taste. Slurp, slurp, slurp. The husband rabbit began to suck on the cherry tomato as if he was bewitched. And squeak, squeak, seeing their father's actions, the baby rabbits each picked up a cherry tomato and started to suck on them. Slurp, 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 slurp. For a while, only the slurping sounds could be heard inside the cave. The group committed a grave sin by eating cherry tomatoes, excluding the wife rabbit. This sin was particularly concentrated on the husband rabbit. Squeak, squeak. The husband rabbit rubbed his body against his sulking wife rabbit as she prepared dinner, trying to be affectionate. However, the wife rabbit completely ignored her husband's charm and turned her head away. Squeak! The husband rabbit looked at Sejun with a sad expression, asking for help. Hang in there. Sejun, who had never seen a good outcome when getting involved in a couple's quarrel, clenched his fist and showed a fighting pose, refusing to help the husband rabbit. A pleasant mealtime. Lunch consisted of piranha, cherry tomatoes, and grilled green onions. Even though there was only one more menu item, the meal felt much richer. The wife rabbit placed a variety of food on each leaf plate and placed it at everyone's seat. Squeak! The husband rabbit protested quietly to his wife when he saw only grilled green onions on his plate. Squeak! Although he couldn't understand them, it seemed like she said, "Just eat it." In the end, the husband rabbit failed to calm his wife's anger. Squeak! Poor guy. Sejun secretly gave some of his food to the heartbroken husband rabbit. Squeak! The husband rabbit sent a grateful glance to Sejun and quietly disappeared. And while tearing the flesh stained with piranha thorns in the corner of the cave, squeak! The husband rabbit met the eyes of his wife rabbit, who approached thinking he was crying. As a couple, they communicated with their eyes. Where did you get that? From Sejun. The husband rabbit pointed at Sejun with his eyes. Traitor, how could you expose that? Shortly after, he didn't know what had happened, but the two rabbits were arguing and causing a scene, glaring at each other. Indeed, Sejun learned once again the lesson that one should not intervene in a couple's fight. After having lunch, Sejun started picking cherry tomatoes again. Fully ripe cherry tomatoes appeared in a few hours. You have acquired well-ripened magical cherry tomatoes. Your job experience increases slightly. You gained 10 experience points. He picked 67 cherry tomatoes in the afternoon. He harvested a little more than in the morning. He leveled up once more to level 5. For the bonus stats, he raised his strength and stamina by 2 each. Strength and stamina are most important for farming. The harvested cherry tomatoes were stored in a storage room he made in a cool corner of the cave. The storage room was made by digging a pit in a cool corner of the cave and laying leaves densely so that dirt wouldn't enter. Sejun transferred the cherry tomatoes into a plastic container and squeak! The father rabbit moved 2 cherry tomatoes, carrying them on his side. And then, squeak, squeak, the baby rabbits, looking at their father with admiring eyes, carried one cherry tomato each and moved them to the storage room. 1, 2, 3, 105. The total harvested cherry tomatoes were 120, but after eating 15, there were 105 left. Seeing the stack of cherry tomatoes, a sense of pride surged again. He, as Sejun chuckled and returned to his spot. Squeak, squeak, the rabbit couple were pushing the playful young rabbits into their burrow to prepare for night. Well, another day's work done. Watching the rabbits, Sejun also prepared for bed. Pat pat, he gathered dirt to make a pillow and thump, thump, he pounded the dirt to make a sleeping spot and laid sun-dried leaves on the floor to prevent dirt from coming up. It was a somewhat ergonomic dirt bed with 75 days of know-how. Ah, this is nice. When he lay down on the leaves, he could feel the warmth from the sun-dried leaves. Another well-lived day. Park Sejun, as he praised himself and tried to wrap up his day. A quest has been issued. Quest: offer 100 harvested magic cherry tomatoes to the tower manager. Reward: 1 job skill. If refused, death. Sejun angrily sat up. What do they expect me to eat? And at least give a decent reward. Sejun had no expectations for the reward after receiving the seed sowing job skill. But he couldn't refuse either. I can't die. Here, Sejun offered the magical cherry tomatoes with tears, reluctantly. You have completed the quest. The tower manager is satisfied. As a reward for completing the quest, you have acquired the job skill, harvesting LV1. Ah, seriously, why do I need a skill for harvesting? As expected, there was no answer. He didn't bother to check the skill. Even if there was a slight increase in something, it would only make him angrier. It's only me who loses by getting angry. Sejun calmed himself down and lay down again. He closed his eyes, planning to sleep, but within a second. Snores. Sejun fell asleep. No, my tomatoes. Even in his dreams, Sejun tried his best to protect the cherry tomatoes. Yawn. Swoosh. Sejun, who had just woken up, drew another stick on the cave wall. In front of it, there were 16 zheng line marks. Day 82 of being trapped in the tower had begun. There was a lot to do this morning. He had to harvest cherry tomatoes from the 8 cherry tomato trees he planted later and watered. Cherry tomato trees he harvested earlier. Especially since he needed to gain experience. Cherry tomato harvesting was solely Sejun's responsibility. Snap. Sejun picked a slightly green cherry tomato. You have harvested a slightly unripe magic cherry tomato. The effect of harvesting LV1 turns the fruit into its optimal state. Harvesting LV1 proficiency slightly increases. Job experience slightly increases. You have gained 10 experience points. The harvesting skill was more useful than he thought. The skill had the effect of turning slightly underripe or overripe fruits into their optimal state when harvested. Also, the proficiency increased with each harvest. Thanks to the skill, he could harvest crops in their best condition. And even if he harvested underripe cherry tomatoes, he could still gain normal job experience. The harvest was quick since there were only 8 trees. He harvested 50 cherry tomatoes from the trees. Guys, let's eat some cherry tomatoes. Squeak, squeak. At Sejun's words, the baby rabbits who were watering the cherry tomato trees rushed over. The baby rabbits, who were already a month and a half old, had grown a lot thanks to eating well, and now they were as tall as the husband rabbit's shoulder. Pop, slurp, slurp, slurp. The baby rabbits began sucking the juice from the cherry tomatoes. Here you go. Sejun also handed 1 cherry tomato each to the working rabbit couple. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple bowed their heads in gratitude. Pop. Sejun also put a cherry tomato in his mouth and bit into it. Crunch. Ah, it's so good. As the sweet and sour taste filled his mouth, he couldn't help but exclaim. Then, the tower manager urges you to complete the quest quickly. I don't want to. I'll do it later. Since Sejun started harvesting cherry tomatoes, the quests given by the tower manager became increasingly greedy, with the number of cherry tomatoes requested growing constantly. The rewards were not even good. After giving him the harvesting skill, there had been no rewards. It had been 5 days since he started offering cherry tomatoes. A quest has occurred. Quest: offer 500 harvested magical cherry tomatoes to the tower's manager. Reward: none. Refusal: death. As the tower's manager demanded 500 cherry tomatoes, Sejun's rage gauge reached its maximum. This is crossing the line. 500? He can't endure this every day. I refuse. Sejun finally released the anger he had bottled up in his chest. His chest felt lighter, but his face turned pale. And he quickly thought of a way to survive. As long as I don't reject the quest, I should be fine. I'll offer them later. The tower manager is taken aback. That's how Sejun was rebelling against the tower's manager by postponing the completion of the quest. And the tower's manager is angry that you are eating the magical cherry tomatoes alone. Then I'll offer 5. Occasionally, when the tower's manager was angry, Sejun would offer a few cherry tomatoes. The manager was still the tower's manager, after all, and it wouldn't do to be too hated. The tower's manager will let it go this time. Sejun was engaged in this push and pull with the tower's manager. Day 91 of the disaster. The 4th blue moon was approaching. Peek, peek. The rabbit couple pushed their babies into the cave and covered the entrance with dirt to prepare for the blue moon. Sejun also put out the fire and cleared away smelly things to prepare for the blue moon. And this time, he prepared earplugs made from rolled up leaves and magical cherry tomatoes to avoid passing out. He had heard that having a higher magic power could withstand the monster's roar. So in case a situation like last time occurred, he prepared the magical cherry tomatoes to slightly increase his magic power. It would be best if nothing like last time happens. As Sejun was thinking that, the sunlight turned blue. The blue moon had begun. Soon after, ku-aha, kya-ya, the roars of monsters excited by the blue moon could be heard from afar. Don't come here. Don't come here. An hour had passed like that, with Sejun silently praying in his heart. A mysterious phenomenon appeared before Sejun's eyes. A blue aura began to form on one of the cherry tomato plants. It was the energy of the blue moon. The energy of the blue moon slowly moved along the stem to the cherry tomatoes and was absorbed by them. And then, wow, the cherry tomatoes turned blue. The sight of the blue moon's energy being contained in the cherry tomatoes was mysterious and beautiful. Sejun witnessed the entire process of the blue moon's energy being absorbed by the cherry tomatoes for the first time. I want to harvest them quickly. Sejun was eagerly waiting for the blue moon to end. At that moment, he saw the blue energy moving in the sweet potato vines as well. Chapter 8. It is a good competitor. SSSSs. The power of the blue moon that had settled on the sweet potato stem went along the stem and into the ground. Was there a sweet potato there? All the sweet potatoes planted this time were for seedlings. The plan was to cut the sweet potato shoots when they grew to a certain extent and transplant them. In this way, sweet potatoes could be infinitely reproduced. Although it was farming learned from the internet, there had been no failures so far. I didn't even expect sweet potatoes. Sejun unknowingly drooled at the thought of eating sweet potatoes. Should I eat it raw? Or grilled? Can I steam it? Sejun stayed awake until the dawn of the 92nd day of the ordeal, thinking about how to eat the sweet potatoes. Following his daily routine, he first drew a line on the wall and then moved to the sweet potato field, and then, sack. Sejun carefully began to dig around the ground where the energy of the blue moon had flowed. He had barely dug a bit of dirt with his hands, and already the head of a blue sweet potato appeared. Sack. Sejun tried to calm his excited hands, even more carefully removing the dirt around the sweet potato as if he were exploring an archaeological artifact. Soon, Sejun carefully lifted a fist-sized blue sweet potato from the ground. You have harvested a power sweet potato imbued with the energy of the blue moon. Your job experience increases significantly. Harvesting LV1 proficiency increases greatly. Harvesting LV1 proficiency is filled, and the level increases. You have gained 50 experience points. The job experience and skill proficiency, which had barely increased, rose greatly. On top of that, the skill level also increased. However, none of that was important to Sejun right now. Sejun looked at the sweet potato in his hand. Power sweet potato imbued with the energy of the blue moon. A sweet potato grown inside the tower. It is delicious with plenty of nutrients. The taste has been further enhanced by the energy of the blue moon. Permanently increases strength by 0.05 upon consumption. Grower, Tower Farmer Park Sejun. Shelf life, 30 days. Grade A. The content said that it was already delicious but now even more so. Sejun went to the cherry tomato field and also harvested the blue cherry tomatoes imbued with the energy of the blue moon. You have harvested magical cherry tomatoes imbued with the energy of the blue moon. Your job experience increases significantly. Harvesting LV2 proficiency increases quite a bit. You have gained 50 experience points. Perhaps because the harvesting skill had just leveled up, the skill proficiency increase was smaller than before. With a blue sweet potato in his right hand and a blue cherry tomato in his left, he felt like he had the world in his hands. At that moment, an additional quest has been triggered. A message that ruined Sejun's mood appeared. I knew it. The threat of the extortionist disguised as a quest, always coveting Sejun's crops, had begun. Quest. Offer the blue moon energy-infused power sweet potato to the tower's manager. Reward. None. If refused, death. Quest. Offer the blue moon energy-infused magical cherry tomato to the tower's manager. Reward. None. If refused, death. Two quests appeared at the same time. Is it more serious this time? Sejun could tell from the exclamation marks how eager the tower's manager was. What should I do? Refusing could offend the tower's manager and put Sejun in real danger. However, this time, Sejun didn't want to give in. So, he decided to complete the remaining quests first to appease the tower's manager. I offer the remaining magical cherry tomatoes. The quest has been completed. Sejun completed the quest to offer 500 magical cherry tomatoes. The tower's manager is delighted with the basket full of magical cherry tomatoes. The tower's manager grumbles about what's going on. The manager tried to hide their excitement, but their feelings were exposed through the messages. The administrator's personality turned out to be simpler than expected. Sejun decided not to yield today since the manager seemed to be in a good mood. I'll give you this next time. Sejun accepted both quests and put them on hold. He didn't want to lose these delicious items as he had lost others before. I should eat too. The tower's manager wants that you must give it to them next time. Although Sejun was angry at the manager's attitude, as if they were taking a loan, he decided to endure it for today. He didn't want his happiness to be disturbed by such a thing. But what should I do with these? The sweet potato was big enough to share with the rabbits, but the cherry tomatoes were too small. Then there's only one way. Eat quickly and destroy the evidence. Sejun decided to give the rabbits more magical cherry tomatoes. Sejun put the blue cherry tomato in his mouth. Peepop-duk. The skin of the blue moon energy-infused cherry tomato was chewy like jelly. And then, kyak, the cherry tomato juice filled Sejun's mouth with a tangy sweetness that bounced around. If the magical cherry tomato was a humble local festival, the blue moon energy-infused magic cherry tomato was a glamorous city festival. Gulp. You consumed the Blue Moon energy-infused magical cherry tomato. Magic power permanently increased by 0.05 UHM. Even after swallowing, the lingering sweet and sour taste in his mouth made him oblivious to the message. Sejun, who had eaten the blue cherry tomatoes, went to the bonfire. It's a shame that there's no tin foil. Sejun had a versatile scallion leaf. Peeper Duduk. He broke the scallion leaf and wrapped the sweet potato in the leaf. And he waited, expecting to eat roasted sweet potatoes. He hummed a tune naturally. During the waiting time, he could have caught piranhas or harvested cherry tomatoes. But he didn't do any of that today. It was the first day since coming here that he was going to enjoy roasted sweet potatoes. He carefully tended the bonfire to ensure that the sweet potato didn't burn. Indeed, waiting for something delicious is the happiest thing. How much time has passed? Crack, crack, as the sound of the scallion leaf firewood popping pleasantly filled the air. Squeak, 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 squeak. The rabbit family came out of their burrow. Sniff, sniff. The rabbits came out of the burrow and, with their eyes closed, were naturally drawn to the fire where the sweet potato was being cooked. Just wait a little bit longer, and I'll let you eat something delicious. Squeak. At Sejun's words, the baby rabbits cheered. The rabbit couple also happily waited behind, arms folded. After a while, the smell of roasted sweet potatoes began to fill the air. Squeak, squeak. The baby rabbits started to get anxious, wondering if the sweet potatoes were burning. But Sejun didn't panic. Timing was important from here on out. If he took the sweet potatoes out too early, only the surface would be cooked. If he took them out too late, the surface would be completely burnt. Sejun carefully observed and waited for the smell to ripen. And then, now is the time. Sejun quickly took the sweet potato wrapped in the leaf from the fire. Shush, shush. He peeled off the burnt leaf. A sweet potato with a slightly burnt skin appeared. Gulp. Sejun carefully stabbed the sweet potato with a fish bone. Thud. The fish bone smoothly went through the center of the sweet potato. It's perfect. Sejun grinned and moved the roasted sweet potato onto a clean leaf using the fish bone like chopsticks. Then, he cut the leaf into smaller pieces and began to peel the sweet potato while holding the end. Ouch, it's hot. His hand was hot from peeling, but thinking of the sweet potato he was about to eat, he endured the heat. With each peel, crumbles of sweet potato fell off, sticking to the skin. I'll eat that by myself later. Sejun secretly gathered the sweet potato peels in one place. However, squeak, squeak, the baby rabbits had already smelled the peels and were eagerly licking and eating the sweet potato crumbs stuck to the skin. Smart, little ones. The rabbits' behavior was admirable, as they figured things out without being taught. They turned out to be genius rabbits who knew what to do without instruction. While having the peels taken away by the baby rabbits, Sejun finished peeling the sweet potato, leaving only the peeled sweet potato. Steam rose. Looking at the steaming hot yellow flesh of the roasted sweet potato, he couldn't help but smile. Squeak, squeak. The baby rabbits, who had already cleaned their peels, were demanding more sweet potatoes. All right. Sejun cut the roasted sweet potato into small pieces and placed them on each rabbit's leaf plate. Since they were sharing the sweet potato, they wouldn't gain any power from it. However, I don't care. He wanted to share and eat this first harvested crop with his family. As there were many family members, the amount of sweet potato each of them received was not much. At that moment, no, squeak, as the baby rabbits tried to eat the roasted sweet potato in front of them, Sejun stopped them, and they looked confused. Let's eat together. Bring your parents over. Squeak. At Sejun's words, the baby rabbits hurriedly went and brought the rabbit couple as if carrying them. Finally, everyone sat down in front of their leaf plates. Let's eat. Squeak. Speet. Squeak. Speet, squeak, speet. The rabbits put the roasted sweet potatoes in their mouths and spat them out in a hurry. It seemed that they didn't realize that the sweet potatoes were still hot, probably because there was no steam. Hee hee, you need to cool them down. Hoo hoo. Sejun showed them how to blow on the roasted sweet potatoes to cool them down. Hoo hoo, hoo hoo. Puff puff. The rabbits also followed Sejun and blew on the sweet potatoes to cool them down. Shall we try eating now? Squeak. Sejun took a big bite of the roasted sweet potato, and the sweet taste with the hot steam spread throughout his mouth. As expected, the inside of the sweet potato was still hot. However, Sejun had a special skill. Huff, huff. Sejun rolled the sweet potato in his mouth, cooling it down with the air inside. Of course, the downside was that it looked a bit unappealing. Sejun carefully chewed the cooled down sweet potato. Squishy. The soft sweet potato crumbled even before Sejun could bite into it. And finally, the long-awaited sweetness exploded. It felt like a burst of sunshine in his mouth. It's delicious. Of course, it would have been nice to have a collaboration with milk and kimchi, but it wasn't lacking without them. The late Apple CEO also said, "Simple is best." Rather, without any other distractions, Sejun could focus on the pure sweetness of the sweet potato. The sweet potato confidently competed with just its sweetness, but it was never boring or tiring. It is a good competitor to 5-star cuisines. Sejun ate the sweet potato down to the peel without realizing it. I won't tolerate any disrespect towards sweet potatoes as a mere root vegetable. Sweet potatoes are good competitors. Sejun got up from his seat with random thoughts in his head. At that moment, gurgle, his stomach made a noise. Why? He felt like he had eaten a lot, but his stomach was acting as if it was empty. Upon reflection, all he had eaten for breakfast was one cherry tomato and a bit of roasted sweet potato. It was natural to be hungry. Squeak, squeak. The baby rabbits began to whine with hunger. Plop plop. The rabbit couple quickly broke some leaves and roasted them on the fire, preparing breakfast. And then, just wait a little bit. Sejun went to the storage and got cherry tomatoes to give one to each baby rabbit and ran to the pond to catch piranhas. Chomp chomp, chomp chomp. Thanks to the cherry tomatoes, the baby rabbits became quiet. Thus, the fourth blue moon passed without any major incidents. Chapter 9. Getting Rewarded. Morning of the 95th day of distress. Listen carefully, everyone. Peak, BBAE BBAE, BBAE. From today, we'll plant sweet potato shoots. Sejun made a significant announcement to the rabbits eating breakfast. BBAE. BBAE. The baby rabbits were greatly disappointed by Sejun's significant announcement. Sweet potato shoots were one of the baby rabbits' favorite snacks lately. And that was also the reason why Sejun had to plant sweet potato shoots quickly. If left alone, the sweet potato shoots would disappear soon. Although sweet potato shoots grow quickly and there's no need to worry, planting them today would mean harvesting the sweet potatoes sooner. Instead, we'll have roasted sweet potatoes tonight. Peak, BBAER, BBAE. All the rabbits were excited about the roasted sweet potatoes. Shoo! Sejun also checked the soil around the planted sweet potatoes and found that the sweet potatoes were spaced apart. Of course, they didn't harvest them immediately. There was a looter targeting the sweet potatoes, watching carefully. He found out about it on the day of the fourth blue moon lunch. Sejun wanted to eat cherry tomatoes differently than usual. That's when he remembered grilling oranges or pineapples on TV. So he decided to grill cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes will work, right? Even if it doesn't, it won't be inedible. Sejun made a skewer with dried straw and started grilling 3 cherry tomatoes on it. The tower manager watches with great interest what you're cooking today. A sudden message appeared. There was no reply after that, but Sejun learned that the tower manager occasionally watched him, and the grilled cherry tomatoes were incredibly delicious, as their sweetness was enhanced by the fire, just as it was on TV. All right, move, move. After breakfast, Sejun and the rabbit started moving busily. They had to finish the daily morning tasks of cutting the straw, watering the crops, pollinating the cherry tomato flowers, and harvesting before planting the sweet potato shoots in the afternoon. The rabbits scattered to do their assigned tasks. Swoosh! The male rabbit watered the crops with an endless supply of water from the watering can. Snap! Snap! The female rabbit started cutting the straw with scissors. Just leave one straw untouched. I'm going to keep growing it, Sejun told the female rabbit. He was planning to let the green onion flower bloom and collect its seeds. Peek. The female rabbit nodded at Sejun's words. Until now, there was no need to collect seeds as the green onions grew well, but the roots did not become items when harvested. Sejun thought it was because they hadn't planted seeds, so he decided to grow green onions from seeds. Peek. The baby rabbits played by hanging on the cherry tomato tree and climbing it diligently. It looked like they were playing, but it was work in its own way. When the baby rabbits climbed the tree, the cherry tomato flowers shook, and the pollen naturally scattered, allowing pollination to occur. The rabbits worked in their respective positions while Sejun harvested cherry tomatoes. Pluck, pluck. You have harvested well-ripened magical cherry tomatoes. Your harvesting LV2 skill proficiency has increased slightly. Your job experience points have increased slightly. You have gained 10 experience points. You have leveled up. You have gained 1 bonus stat point. Sejun had reached level 8 before he knew it. Not only did he feel full just from gaining experience points, but his level also increased. He. How rewarding. Sejun raised his health with the bonus stat point and put more effort into harvesting cherry tomatoes. Pluck, pluck, pluck. Then, your job experience points have reached the maximum. Your tower farmer, F, rank has increased. You have become a tower farmer, A. As your job rank increases, your job characteristics are strengthened. Oh, farming is indeed rewarding. As he worked, more and more things kept coming to him. Sejun's steps grew lighter as he harvested cherry tomatoes. All right. Let's get started. After finishing their morning tasks and eating a simple lunch, Sejun and the rabbits began planting sweet potato shoots. Everyone to their positions. They divided the work again. Squeak, squeal. The baby rabbits lined up next to the mother rabbit. Snip, snip. As the mother rabbit cut the sweet potato shoots, the baby rabbits carried them to the newly made field. Then, Sejun planted the sweet potato shoots one by one in the long, narrow holes he had dug at regular intervals. Stomp, stomp. He put the sweet potato shoot in the hole and stamped the surrounding soil to finish planting. And, swoosh, the father rabbit watered the plants to complete the process. Even though they had many workers, it took longer than expected to plant the sweet potato shoots because there were so many. They planted 300, but still had a third of the shoots left. Let's take a break. At Sejun's command, the rabbits began to seep juice from cold cherry tomatoes that had been dipped in a small pond. I'm jealous. Crunch, crunch. Sejun chewed on a cold cherry tomato, enviously watching the rabbits drink the cherry tomato juice like a beverage. Phew. Taking a break while watching the rabbits, Sejun got up from his spot and approached the sweet potato field where the shoots had been cut. Then, pat, pat, he started digging up sweet potatoes, brushing away the soil with his hands. It would have been nice to have a hoe. He regretted not having any farming tools. You have harvested power sweet potatoes. Your job experience points have increased slightly. Your harvesting LV2 skill proficiency has increased slightly. You have gained 10 experience points. Wow, there are so many. Sejun looked proudly at the harvested sweet potatoes. In total, He had harvested 15 sweet potatoes. For each sweet potato planted, he harvested about 5 sweet potatoes. Although the number was small, the potatoes were thick. Sejun examined one sweet potato. Power sweet potato. A sweet potato grown inside the tower. It's delicious and full of nutrients. Upon consumption, it breaks down 10 grams of fat in the body and increases strength by 0.1 for 10 minutes. A maximum of 10 effects can be applied within 1 hour. When a non-awakened being consumes it, it breaks down 10 grams of fat and promotes bowel movement. Cultivator, Tower Farmer Park Sejun. Expiration date, 30 days. Grade A. If I could take this outside, my mom would love it. Sejun often saw his mother struggling to go to the bathroom due to constipation. He briefly thought of his home and moved the sweet potatoes. He had to hide them before the plunderer saw them. In a cool corner of the cave, he laid down some straw, placed 8 sweet potatoes in a row, and covered them again with straw. They won't be able to see them like this. He moved the remaining 7 sweet potatoes to the fire and wrapped them in straw, placing them in the fire. By the time the work was finished, the roasted sweet potatoes would be ready. At that moment, thud, something that was stuck to Sejun's clothes fell off. It's a sweet potato sprout. It must have come along while moving the sweet potatoes. Sejun picked up the sweet potato sprout, dug a hole in the field, and carefully planted it in the field. He didn't know how many sweet potatoes this one sprout would produce. Grow big and strong. When he carefully planted it and watered it, you planted a sweet potato sprout. The probability of the sweet potato sprout taking root increases due to the effect of seed sowing. LV 1. Seed sowing. LV 1's proficiency increases slightly. So this is also considered seed sowing. Sejun fell into thought for a moment. To raise the level of seed sowing, he had to plant it himself. Sigh. Then, I have to do it all. After the break, the workload for Sejun became much easier as he did the entire process of planting sweet potato sprouts by himself, and the baby rabbits just brought the sprouts to the holes he had dug. Sniff, sniff. Instead, the baby rabbits were given the task of periodically monitoring whether the roasted sweet potatoes in the fire were burning. When Sejun finished planting all the remaining sweet potato sprouts, peep, peep, the baby rabbits started crying out that there was a burning smell. Is this how it's done? The giant black dragon crouched in front of the fire, looking at the 30 charcoal black cherry tomatoes skewered on the rapier, which looked almost like a skewer. The color was very different from what that human made. Let's just eat it. I won't die. No poison could kill him, the all-powerful being. The dragon hooked the rapier on his teeth and pulled it hard. Slurp. The peel, which had almost turned into charcoal, rolled into the dragon's mouth. Chew, chew, ooh. Contrary to his expectation, an extremely bitter taste arose. Twee. The dragon quickly spat out what he was chewing. He couldn't waste his taste buds on something so tasteless. Ugh, it's bitter. What went wrong? That human ate it happily, as the dragon wondered what was different from the human he had observed. As the bitter taste subsided, a rich flavor different from the original cherry tomatoes was felt in his mouth. A new taste appeared. Oh, this is the taste. I need to peel it and eat it. Having gained a great realization, the dragon once again burnt the cherry tomato to a crisp and barely managed to peel off its skin using its claws, whining all the while. It would be more accurate to say that it simply crushed the cherry tomato and drank its juice. Slurp. Mmm. Delicious. So good. The dragon licked the cherry tomato juice off its claws and exclaimed in delight. Having learned a new way to cook, the dragon proudly sat in front of the large crystal ball and began its hobby. What is this human doing? Originally, the crystal ball was a tool for the tower's manager to check if the tower was running smoothly, but now it was being used for entertainment purposes. The scene in the crystal ball began to show a cave where Sejun and the rabbits were eating dinner. Ah, these guys. Eating roasted sweet potatoes without considering the great black dragon. Alan Pritani. Black dragon Alan Pritani was excited. Hoo, poo. The rabbits diligently blew on the roasted sweet potatoes to cool them down and delicious meal. Happily. Wang. Sejun also took a big bite of the cooled roasted sweet potato. As expected, it's even more delicious after working hard. Sejun felt the sweetness filling his mouth as he ate the sweet potato. At that moment, an additional quest has been generated. I wondered why it was so quiet. Quest: offer 1 roasted power sweet potato to the tower's manager. Reward: none. Refusal: death. It seemed that the tower's manager was indeed watching. There's just 1 roasted sweet potato left in front of me now. Again, there was no reward. I guess I'll have to give it. Sejun decided to put the quest on hold. And when he reached out to eat the roasted sweet potato, the tower's manager urges you to offer the roasted sweet potato quickly. The tower's manager says they won't be able to stand it if you don't give them the roasted sweet potato today. The tower's manager's strong obsession was felt. It's going to be hard to pass this time. Sejun decided to give the roasted sweet potato. Is there nothing you can give me as a reward? Instead, he changed direction and asked for a legitimate reward since he had to give it anyway. The tower's manager is flustered. Flustered? Why would asking for a reward be flustering? Then, the tower's manager changes the quest. Quest: offer 1 roasted power sweet potato to the tower's manager. Reward: 1 job skill. Refusal: death. Another job skill. Although he wasn't completely satisfied, he decided to be content with having negotiated a reward. I will offer you the roasted sweet potato. He didn't have any expectations for the reward. It's probably skills like cutting grass, watering, stuff like that. You have completed the quest. As a reward for completing the quest, you have acquired the job skill, Seed Shop LV 1. Chapter 10. Buying seeds. Seed shop. A shop is a place to sell items. Sejun, who has lived in a capitalist society, is very familiar with it. He felt excited inside. Sejun quickly checked the skill. Job skill, Seed Shop LV 1. When used, the skill is activated, and you can purchase items from the seed shop once every 30 days. Purchasing something. Although it's only once every 30 days, Sejun was happy just to be able to shop. Finally, on the 95th day of the ordeal, he could shop. Seed shop. Sejun used the seed shop skill. Seed shop LV 1 is activated. We will check your transaction history at the seed shop. Transaction history. There is no transaction history in your seed shop. Of course, there isn't. There's no history since he never made a transaction. We will provide a new member offer for you. Congratulations on becoming a new member. You've received 1 tower coin to make purchases at the seed shop. Oh, tower coin. Tower coin is a currency used inside the tower. The exchange rate for 1 tower coin is about 1 million won, Korean currency, outside. They're just giving away such tower coins. Sejun's heart pounded. 1 tower coin will be deposited into your seed bank account. It seemed that there was also a seed bank. The seed shop is open. 3 types of seeds are randomly displayed for newcomers. It was different from a regular shop. 3 types of seeds for sale today will be displayed randomly. At your current level, you can only purchase seeds once. And the seeds that appeared. Cabbage seeds 1000 pieces 0.1 tower coin. Pepper seeds 1000 pieces 0.1 tower coin. Carrot seeds 1000 pieces 0.1 tower coin. In terms of market prices, 1000 seeds would cost roughly 100,000 won. This price is a complete rip-off. However, there is no other way to get them except here. It's unfair. Maybe I should leave. Sejun muttered and looked at which seeds to buy. Since he could not make a purchase for 30 days after this, Sejun's gaze was cautious. I'll pass on the cabbage. There wasn't much to do with just cabbage. The chili peppers are not that great either. He wanted something spicy. However, it seemed that the taste would not come out with just pepper. Then is it a carrot? At least carrots have a sweet taste, so they can be eaten raw or roasted. At that time, squeak, squee, squee, squeak, the rabbit's eyes focused on Sejun at the mention of the word carrot. Why? Do you want carrots? Squeak, squee, squee, squeak. The rabbits reacted strongly to Sejun's words. It's amusing. Their eyes were round and staring, which was cute. Caw. The rabbit's eyes grew bigger, watching Sejun's mouth. Rot. Squeak, squee, squee, squeak. The rabbits got excited again. What is this? This magical word? If they had heard the carrot alarm outside, the rabbits might have died of excitement. Carrot, carrot, thud. After doing it a few more times, Sejun eventually got kicked by Father Rabbit and stopped. Then, to quickly calm the rabbits down, he hurriedly bought carrot seeds. You have purchased 1000 carrot seeds. 0.1 tower coin is withdrawn from Park Sejun's account at the seed bank. 1 seed shop loyalty point has been accumulated. Seed shop loyalty points can be used to raise Park Sejun's customer level. 100 points are needed to raise to the next level. Thank you for using the seed shop. You can use seed shop LV1 again after 30 days. The tower's administrator is satisfied with your purchase. Why are you satisfied? There was a reason they gave him a decent skill. In front of Sejun, who was fuming, a small leather pouch filled with carrot seeds appeared. The pouch was very luxurious. What's this? The pouch seemed more expensive than the seeds. Although it was late in the evening, the rabbits, who always strictly adhered to bedtime, stayed up all night planting carrots. The rabbits' desire for carrots was tremendous. Sejun had to stay up all night as well. Planting carrots was his responsibility. However, planting 1000 carrot seeds was a rewarding day as the level of his seed sowing skill increased. On the 102nd day of being trapped in the tower, the day was passing by peacefully. Boo, boo. The baby rabbits would repeatedly go to the wide carrot field to watch the carrot sprouts, eagerly, only to be disappointed that they hadn't sprouted yet after finishing their chores. Cute little ones. Sejun smiled as he watched the baby rabbits from his designated seat. Then he heard a buzzing sound from above. A bee the size of a fist was hovering around the hole in the cave ceiling. The plump bee looked cute, but venomous honeybee. It was a monster. Its name also looked quite dangerous. Beak, bee. The rabbit couple discovered the bee, hurriedly brought their babies inside the cave, and blocked the entrance. What about me? Sejun was disappointed that they closed the entrance, trying to save themselves. He knew he couldn't enter the cave, but he was upset. With nowhere to hide unlike the rabbits, Sejun tiptoed carefully and picked up a torch near the pond, trying not to provoke the bee. A moment later, buzz, the bee, after inspecting its surroundings and finding no threat, entered the hole. It started sucking honey from the cherry tomato flowers. Phew! Thank goodness. Sejun was relieved that the bee didn't attack him. Please just eat the honey and leave. Sejun prayed desperately for the bee to just leave. Then, after sucking honey from hundreds of flowers, the venomous honeybee suddenly flew towards Sejun. Buzz! Why is it coming? Sejun backed away as he saw the approaching bee. But this place was a closed cave. Thump! Soon, his back hit the wall. Buzz! The bee approached Sejun, who had no more room to retreat. The distance between Sejun and the bee was getting closer. Now, it was almost 2 meters apart. Sejun was so tense that he couldn't breathe properly. I can't die like this. Sejun timed when to swing the torch. Just then, whine, whine, whine. The bee moved up and down 3 times in front of Sejun and quickly flew to the hole in the ceiling. Ah! Phew. Thud. As the tension was released, Sejun's legs lost strength and he slumped down. A few minutes must have passed. Peek. The husband rabbit cautiously opened the hole and looked around. And then, peek. Upon finding Sejun with his eyes closed and lying down, the husband rabbit hurriedly rushed over. At that moment, "Ooh!" Sejun opened his eyes and screamed, startling the husband rabbit. Peek. The husband rabbit screamed in surprise. He he he. It was a bee that abandoned me. Pee. At Sejun's words, the husband rabbit had a sorry expression. I know, dude. As the head of the family, you should protect your family. Sejun stroked the husband rabbit's head. And then, thud, he lightly slapped the back of the husband rabbit's head. Peek. The husband rabbit touched the back of his head, looking confused. Didn't you just forgive me? But what you did was still wrong. Sejun was too narrow-minded to forgive easily. And so, the poisonous honeybee incident came to an end. The poisonous honeybee was very happy lately. Up until recently, eating was something the poisonous honeybee had to do reluctantly in order to survive. Poisonous honeybees usually hunt with their peers, hunting monsters with their venomous stingers and eating their flesh, while the other poisonous honeybees enjoyed eating the flesh. This meal was a real ordeal for the honeybee. It's tasteless. There was no appetite, but it ate just to avoid dying. One day, while hunting with its peers as usual, and eating the tasteless flesh of a monster, a sweet scent came wafting from somewhere. What's this smell? I want to eat it. Upon smelling it, the honeybee's appetite came to life for the first time. Whine. Following the scent, the poisonous honeybee arrived at a hole in the ground. There was a yellow flower beneath the hole, and a sweet scent came from it. However, there were beings guarding the place. The honeybee was sad that the place had an owner, but as it was about to leave, the owner of the cave gave way. Thank you. Thanks to the cave owner's consideration, the poisonous honeybee had its first delicious meal. And as a sign of gratitude to the owner who provided the delicious meal, the honeybee returned home. The next day, whine, I'm back again. The poisonous honeybee came back to eat honey. On the 102nd day of being trapped in the tower, the family gained a new member. On the 113th day of being trapped in the tower, carrot sprouts began to appear one by one since yesterday. Squeak. BVM. Yesterday, the rabbits were so excited about the carrot sprouts that Sejun had to work alone. Around lunchtime, buzz, the poison honeybee arrived inside the cave. Creak. Welcome. Rub rub. The poison honeybee perched on Sejun's shoulder and rubbed its body against Sejun's cheek, showing affection. It was the bee's way of clocking in. At first, Sejun was a little scared of the poison honeybee, but the more he looked at it, the cuter and more affectionate it seemed. Buzz. After clocking in with Sejun, the poison honeybee flew to the cherry tomato flowers and began to suck nectar. Having the poison honeybee frequent the cave had a benefit. Sejun no longer had to pollinate the cherry tomato flowers separately. In other words, BV, the baby rabbits in charge of pollinating the cherry tomato flowers were thrilled. These days, the baby rabbits ran around the cave playing. Sejun watched them with envy. Isn't there anyone to take over my work? Lately, Sejun's workload had been increasing, unlike the baby rabbits. He had to personally harvest and sow seeds to increase his skill proficiency. Yesterday, he extracted seeds from 50 magical cherry tomatoes and planted them in the ground. He planted about 1200 seeds. Although he complained, Sejun's heart was actually filled with pride. The fields were expanding, and there was more and more food. Moreover, they had one more thing to eat. Buzz. The poison honeybee, after sucking nectar from the flowers for a while, landed back on Sejun's shoulder. Here, as Sejun placed an empty water bottle in front of the poison honeybee. Gurgle gurgle. It spat out a small amount of honey. The poison honeybee started spitting out honey 2 days ago. It spat a thick liquid on Sejun's roasted green onion that he was eating, and at the time, Sejun was shocked, thinking it was poison. However, sniff sniff, seeing the rabbit sniffing the liquid that had fallen from Sejun's green onion, Sejun became curious and sniffed it himself. And he tasted it. The rich flavor of honey and the sweetness that filled his mouth. Sejun realized that it was honey. That day, a new dish was born, honey green onions. The tower administrator who had been watching immediately ordered the honey green onions as an offering, but the quest was naturally put on hold. However, this time it was not intentional. There really was no honey. Even if the poison honeybee sucked nectar all day, it could only eat and spit out about 10 milliliters of honey. There were too few flowers. That's why he hurriedly planted 1200 cherry tomatoes yesterday. To get honey. In just a few months, I'll be eating honey like Winnie the Pooh. While Sejun imagined the future flower garden, Buzz, the poison honeybee, having spat out the honey, went back to suck more nectar. A hardworking creature. Very impressive. On the 113th day of being trapped in the tower, a day filled with sweet honey.